You ever get that gnawing sense that something just isn't right? Like an invisible weight presses down on you, sending a shiver up your spine and making the hair on your neck stand on end? That's exactly the kind of night I've been dealing with. My name's Alex Carter. I'm 44 years old, standing about 6 feet tall, and weighing in at 180 pounds. I manage accounts for a large manufacturing firm. My wife, Emily, though she usually goes by Em, is also 44. She's 5 feet 5 inches, around 135 pounds, and has a figure that still turns heads. Tonight, she looked particularly stunning in the dress she picked. Em works in graphic design at a major advertising agency right here in San Antonio. We've been married for 22 years, but our story goes way back. We grew up as neighbors, meeting in 4th grade and becoming inseparable ever since. By the time high school came around, we were dating, and she was my prom date. That night marked a turning point for us. It was when we grew even closer, sharing something deeply personal for the first time. Em and I both attended Texas State University for 3 years, and during the last 2, we shared a small one-bedroom apartment. You could say we were already playing house back then. We have a 20-year-old daughter named Marissa, who's studying at the University of Nebraska. Yeah, she left Texas, which feels like a bit of a betrayal. Just kidding, sort of. Marissa recently got engaged to Chris Guzman, a great guy from Lincoln. His family's deep into the oil business, and his dad holds a big position at a major oil firm in Lincoln, Nebraska. Chris is 25, a bit older than Marissa, but his maturity is obvious. He's crazy about her, and we couldn't be happier. He's pursuing a degree in business law, while Marissa hasn't settled on a major yet. For now, she's enjoying cheerleading and, well, spending my hard-earned money. Financially, we're doing well. Emily earns around $65,000 a year in her role, and I pull in over $450,000 as an account manager. About 12 years ago, we stumbled across a foreclosed property on Canyon Lake. We offered $325,000 in cash, fixed it up, and now it's valued at nearly $2 million. Anyway, back to why my nerves are so frayed tonight. 3 days ago, Emily casually mentioned a company event happening this Saturday night. She gave me the rundown and then added, "Alex, I know these things aren't your scene, and you're probably going to be tired, so don't feel obligated to come." That caught my attention, but I brushed it off. "No, Em," I said. "I've got a few days off, and I'd love to join you." Over the next couple of days, though, she kept bringing it up, gently suggesting I might want to skip it. Every time, I reassured her that I wanted to go, finally getting a chance to meet her colleagues. When the evening rolled around, Emily looked breathtaking in a sleek black dress that hugged her figure and made her golden brown hair shine. Her green eyes sparkled under the dim lights of the venue. The moment we entered the main room, I noticed a man, probably in his late 40s, heading straight toward her. My attention snapped to her as she raised her hand slightly, like a subtle stop signal, before quickly turning to me with a radiant smile and kissing my cheek. That was the first moment I felt it, a tight knot forming in my stomach. Something was off. We shared a couple of drinks, but I stayed sober. Not only was I the designated driver, but I also wanted to keep my wits about me tonight. It wasn't that I doubted Emily's loyalty. In 22 years together, I'd never once suspected her of anything. But something about this man set off my instincts. While we were seated at our table, I overheard someone mention his name, Adler Wilson. That's when my unease solidified. Adler, as it turns out, is a senior advertising sales rep at Emily's agency. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling, especially the way Emily's eyes kept drifting toward Adler during our dances. Each time I caught her glancing over, he was already staring right back at us. His boldness grated on me. After one dance, as we sat catching our breath at the table, Adler sauntered over. Ignoring me entirely, he asked Emily if she wanted to dance with him. Can you believe the gall? He didn't even acknowledge my presence, let alone ask if I minded. The sheer arrogance had my blood boiling. I could feel the heat rising to my face, and my fists tightened under the table. Emily must have noticed how close I was to losing it. She smiled at him, her voice light and sweet as she said, "All my dances are for my husband." I caught a flicker of irritation flash across Adler's face before he turned on his heel, leading another woman onto the dance floor. Not long after, Emily asked for another drink, so I headed to the bar. When I came back, I saw him again, Adler, standing in front of her. The look on her face froze me in my tracks. There was something in her expression, sadness, maybe even regret, that stopped me cold. I lingered, blending into the crowd to observe from a distance. That's when I saw her lips move. The words she mouthed were clear as day to me. Sorry, baby. I've always been good at reading lips. It's a skill I picked up over the years. There was no mistaking it. Those two words sent an icy chill down my spine. For the rest of the night, I kept myself sober and hyper-aware, watching everything and everyone. It felt like the entire room was tuned in, watching Emily, watching me, and especially watching Adler. There was a tension in the air, like everyone was in on something I wasn't. By the time we left, my thoughts were in overdrive. I've never been one to bottle things up, so as soon as we got into the car, I broke the silence. Emily, what's going on with Adler? I asked, keeping my voice as steady as possible. But there was no hiding the edge of hurt and suspicion creeping in. Who is Adler, really? You two seem to have some kind of connection. Are you cheating on me? I kept my eyes on the road, but the silence between us felt suffocating. Finally, she sighed. Alex, Adler is just a colleague. I can't believe you'd even think that. I love you more than anything. Her voice was calm, maybe too calm. Something about it felt practiced, like she was trying too hard to sound convincing. I didn't press her further that night. The quiet between us spoke volumes. Emily knows me too well to underestimate what I'm capable of if I ever felt betrayed. Back in high school, I had a reputation for handling things my way. When a kid used to pick on me, I waited until the last bell rang, cornered him, and taught him a lesson he wouldn't forget. Emily was right there, backing me up when the teachers asked questions, swearing I was with her the whole time. So, yeah, she knows I'm not the kind of man to take betrayal lying down. But those words, sorry, baby, were burned into my memory. The way she looked at him, the way she spoke, it gnawed at me. Maybe I was imagining things. Or maybe there was more to the story than she was letting on. I kept my thoughts to myself, but my mind was already racing ahead, planning my next move. Emily has over $150,000 in her retirement account, and mine's sitting at well over $1 million. We've built a life together, but I needed to know the truth. I wasn't about to lose sleep over doubts or let suspicion eat me alive. So, I hired a private investigator. I knew this guy was professional, discreet, and thorough. If there was something to uncover, he'd find it. It was time to stop wondering and start knowing. He'd bring exactly what I need, a pile of cold, hard evidence. Photos, videos, even audio recordings, sat in front of me. It was all there, undeniable and gut-wrenching. A few weeks later, Emily and I were sitting in our usual spot at the dining table, sipping our morning coffee like we had for years. But this morning was different. I decided it was time to confront her. So, I began, keeping my tone steady. You'd never cheat on me, right? Never have? Her eyes shot up from her mug, surprise flashing across her face. Alex, of course not. Why would you even ask something like that? Without a word, I opened my briefcase and pulled out a large manila envelope. One by one, I laid the photos out on the table, letting the images speak for themselves. The first showed her kissing Adler in front of a Motel 6. The next was her walking into a room with him. Another captured his car parked right outside our house. Then came the ones that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Emily straddling Adler in my favorite recliner, the chair where I'd unwind after long days, and finally, the last blow. The two of them tangled together in our bed. Her face went pale, her hands trembling as she reached for one of the photos. Alex, it's not what it looks like, she stammered. I don't love him. It's just physical. I leaned forward, my voice cold and cutting. It's not just physical to me, Emily. It's everything. She looked desperate, scrambling to explain. He's not better than you, Alex. It's not even about that. It's just different. That's all. It's been happening for over a year. A year? I snapped, louder than I intended. You've been having an affair for over a year? Emily shook her head, as if offended by the word. At work, we don't call it that, she said quietly. I'm his office wife. A lot of people at the company do it. It's just part of the culture. My jaw clenched, and I could feel my fists tighten on the table. What the hell are you talking about? Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached for my hand, but I pulled away. You're not going to leave me, are you, Alex? She whispered. Leaning back in my chair, I shook my head, though not for the reason she hoped. Oh, I'm not leaving, I said, my voice cold. You are. Before she could respond, I dropped the final blow. Your clothes and personal things are already packed in your car. I want you out of my house. Now. Her face crumpled, tears streaming as she sobbed. Where am I supposed to go, Alex? I don't care where you go, I said flatly. Maybe to your office husband's place. Her panic was evident. I can't go to him, she murmured. Adler's married. He has 3 kids. Of course, I already knew that. The private investigator's report was thorough, down to the names of his wife and children and even their address. But I wasn't about to let Emily know how much I knew. Let her figure it out on her own. Emily, I said, my voice low and firm, I don't care where you end up. Go back to the Motel 6 if you want. But you're leaving here. For good. She cried harder, trying to plead. Alex, you're really going to throw away 22 years of marriage? Just like that? I stared her down, my face void of emotion. No, Emily. It wasn't 22 years of marriage. It was 21 years and 1 year of betrayal. You're the one who threw it away. Without another word, she got into her car, tears streaming as the engine roared to life. She sped off, leaving me standing in the driveway. For a moment, I felt the weight of the empty house settling in, but the anger quickly drowned it out. A few hours later, just as I was beginning to settle down, the phone rang. It was Marissa. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before answering. Hey, sweetheart, I said, forcing a cheerful tone. How's everything going with the wedding plans? I was truly happy for Marissa, even though my own world was falling apart. I was covering the costs for the wedding she'd always dreamed of, and she and Christian were handling most of the planning. It was the least I could do for my only daughter. I loved her more than anything and wanted her big day to be perfect. But instead of the excited chatter I was expecting, there was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. My gut tightened. Something was wrong. Dad, Marissa said hesitantly. I just got off the phone with Mom. She's crying and saying you kicked her out of the house. What's going on? Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. The last thing I wanted was to drag Marissa into this mess, but there was no dodging it now. I took a steadying breath. Marissa, listen to me, I said, keeping my voice calm. Your mother has been unfaithful. For over a year, she's been having an affair with someone from her office. Dad, grow up, she snapped, her tone dismissive. It's the 21st century. Stuff like that happens all the time. It's not a big deal if a woman gets a little action on the side. Men have done it forever. I've never done it, I shot back, my voice tight with frustration, and I sure as hell won't tolerate it in my marriage. Are you saying you're okay with that? Is that how you treat Christian? Dad, that's none of your business, she retorted. And besides, Christian and I aren't married yet. What I do is my concern, not his. I was stunned. Who else in our family thinks this way? Aunt Violet does, Dad. So what? I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. My own family. A bunch of cheaters, I muttered, feeling sick. Dad, you need to get over this and let Mom come back home, Marissa insisted. It's not a big deal. Oh, and by the way, I've met Adler. He's a great guy. Mom wants him to be part of the wedding, and I think he should be, too. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? Have you all lost your minds? I exploded. Well, if you want Adler at your wedding, let him walk you down the aisle, because if he's there, I sure as hell won't be. And with that, I hung up. The phone rang several times that night, but I didn't answer. I was done. 2 days later, Emily showed up at the house holding a piece of paper, a court order. Apparently, her office husband had a high-powered lawyer, and she'd managed to secure temporary permission to return to the house until the divorce proceedings were settled. The audacity of it all was infuriating. She even had the gall to try to justify her actions. Alex, it didn't affect our marriage, she said with maddening calmness. I've always been affectionate with you when you wanted, and I can keep being that way. but I don't see any reason to stop seeing Adler. I stared at her, speechless. She genuinely believed what she'd done had no impact on our relationship, as if she could just continue with Adler while I accepted it. The sheer arrogance left me torn between laughter and rage. "You know damn well, Emily," I said through gritted teeth, "I will never put up with a cheating wife. And as for your so-called affection, don't bother. I won't touch you again. You can keep the master bedroom. It's already ruined. That's where you screwed him. I've been sleeping in the guest room ever since I found out what kind of person you really are." "Alex, I'm not like that," she protested, her voice trembling. "I don't care what you call yourself, Emily. It doesn't change the facts. I'll be filing for divorce this week to end this nightmare." But she wasn't done yet. "Alex, I don't want a divorce," she said, her tone shifting to something colder. "And just so you know, Adler and I have already spoken with his lawyer. If you go through with this, I'll get the house and half of everything we own. You make more money than me, so I'll be entitled to a hefty chunk of your paycheck in alimony." Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "So, my dear husband, you might as well sit back and accept it." Her words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. "Like Adler says, go to hell, both of you," I snapped. I stormed into my room, slamming the door so hard the walls seemed to shake. Hours later, just past midnight, there was a soft knock. Emily stood there, tears streaming down her face. "Alex, please," she begged. "I'm sorry. I want us to work this out, but I also want Adler." Her words hit me like a slap. The sheer audacity left me unsure whether to laugh or cry at the absurdity of it all. The next morning, I met with one of our company's lawyers. His analysis was as grim as Emily's smug threats had predicted. She'd likely get the house, half our assets, and with Marissa already living on her own, there'd be no child support. To make matters worse, I'd be stuck paying around $100,000 a year in alimony. "Alex," the lawyer said with a weary sigh, "there's no easy way around this. If you proceed with the divorce, it's going to cost you. Big time." The following days passed in tense silence. Emily and I avoided each other completely, barely exchanging a glance. But on the third day, she finally broke the quiet. "So," she sneered, her tone dripping with contempt, "are you still dumb enough to go through with the divorce?" "My lawyer is reviewing everything," I replied evenly, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. "Screw you, Alex," she spat. "I'll take everything you've got." I didn't respond, just took a slow sip of my beer and stared out the window. About an hour later, I noticed her on the phone in the dining room. When she finished, she walked over, holding the receiver out with a triumphant expression. "Someone wants to talk to you," she said smugly. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Alex, this is Adler," came the voice on the other end. "Listen, man, I get that you're upset, but you need to accept this and roll with it, cucky boy. Otherwise, we'll take everything you've got and make your life a living hell. You have no idea who you're messing with." I felt my blood boil. "You can keep her," I growled. "I don't want her anymore. She's damaged goods. So screw you." I slammed the phone down, my hands trembling with fury. Emily just stood there, watching me with a smug look, completely oblivious to how foolish she and Adler were. They thought they had outsmarted me, but they didn't realize I had caught them red-handed. I had everything. Photos, videos, even recorded conversations, and they were too arrogant to see the bigger picture. The following week, Emily met with Adler 4 more times. Always at the same Motel 6, never at our house. I'd made it clear that if she brought him back here again, there'd be consequences. I think she finally understood I wasn't bluffing. Meanwhile, at work, things were shifting. Our company had been bought out by a larger firm from Montana, and now we were running both their product line and ours. That meant 2 account managers, myself and Tom, a sharp young guy from the new company. I liked him. He was smart and had been through a divorce himself, so he understood what I was dealing with. The company was looking to consolidate and only keep one manager. They wanted Tom, being younger and from their side, but the union offered me some protection. To speed things up, they'd started offering me buyouts. The latest deal was $450,000 plus, converting my retirement plan into company stock. One evening, Tom and I hit up a local strip club near the plant. It was one of his favorite spots. Since his divorce, He had plenty of free time. Over beers, he shared some of his hard-earned wisdom. "Alex, I know what you're going through," he said. "My ex took everything I had. If I could do it over, I'd have sold everything off or just vanished before the divorce even started." I looked at him, his words sinking in. "You're a genius," I said, shaking his hand. I finished my drink, thanked him, and headed out. As I drove home, I noticed Emily wasn't there. She hadn't come home all night. I figured she was with Adler again. As the hours passed, I realized something. I didn't miss her. Not one bit. At one time, I had loved Emily more than anything, but now all I felt was anger and disgust. It was time to put my plan into motion. It was Sunday, and I was watching football when the phone rang. It was Marissa. "Dad, are you getting over your anger yet?" she asked, her tone far too casual for the situation. "What do you need, Marissa?" I replied, already bracing myself. "Mom wants me to talk to you about the wedding." "Okay, what's going on?" "Well," she began hesitantly, "Mom and I think Adler should be part of the wedding too. Maybe he could walk behind us as you and I go down the aisle, then sit down when we get to Mom." "Is that really what you want, Marissa?" I asked, my voice heavy with disbelief. "Yes, Daddy, I think it is. And Mom feels the same way. You're my father and Mom's husband, but Adler's her office husband, so we think he should be included." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Marissa, I've got a better idea. Let your office dad walk you down the aisle, because I won't be there. I'll call Christian to explain and apologize." "Dad, don't be ridiculous," she said, her tone annoyed. "Christian doesn't like this either, but he'll get over it by the wedding night." "Marissa, I wish you a good life," I said quietly. "Goodbye." "What's that supposed to mean, Dad?" she asked, but I didn't answer. I hung up, tears stinging my eyes as I stared at the wall. Later that evening, Emily came home and smirked. "Did you miss me?" "Honey," I said flatly, "I will never miss you. Go somewhere and die." She fled to her room in tears. The next morning, I arrived at the corporate office at 8 a.m. and accepted the buyout offer. $500,000 was transferred into an offshore account, along with a year's salary. With the house and cars already paid off, I went straight to the bank. I had paperwork drawn up to borrow against the house and Emily's BMW. The house, worth $2 million, easily secured a $1.8 million loan, and I borrowed $35,000 against her car, valued at $45,000. The plan was simple: add some debt in her name. The challenge now was getting Emily to sign the documents, but I had a plan for that. After leaving the bank, I returned to work to finish the next 2 weeks and ensure a smooth transition, particularly for Tom, who had been a great colleague. That afternoon, I called the wedding planner and canceled all the credit cards tied to the wedding expenses. "Who will cover the costs now, Mr. Carter?" she asked. "Tell Marissa to ask her new dad, Adler," I replied coldly. Back at my desk, I worked on creating fake life insurance applications, each for $1 million in coverage, naming Emily as the beneficiary. Later that evening, I called Emily, and she seemed surprised. "Emily, if you're not with Adler tonight, how about a nice dinner? Just us?" "That sounds wonderful," she gushed. "I'm so happy you're moving past this. Where should we go?" "The Italian place downtown, under the lights. Is that okay?" "That sounds so romantic, darling. Maybe you'll get lucky tonight," she teased. "I hope to get luckier than you think, Emily," I replied. We had dinner, and during the meal, she leaned in to kiss me. I gently stopped her and said, "Later." Then I brought up the insurance policy. "It's for $1 million, I explained. "The company suggested it, with you as the beneficiary. Isn't your sister Violet a notary?" "Yes, Alex, she is." "Perfect. Let's go to her house and get these signed tonight. Then we can celebrate." "Okay, Alex. Let's do it." After paying for dinner, we went to Violet's house. Emily signed every document without hesitation, her judgment clouded by 6 glasses of wine and the excitement of the evening. She never bothered to read what she was signing. The next day, I rushed the paperwork to the bank and the mortgage company. The $35,000 car loan was approved almost immediately, but the $2 million loan on the house would take about a week to process. I arranged for the funds to be transferred offshore. By the following week, I had finished my last day at work. Before heading home, I stopped by a Ford dealership and traded in my old truck for a brand new F-350, paying in cash. My next stop was the bank. I closed all our credit cards, emptied the savings account, and withdrew everything from checking, leaving only $1,500. Then I contacted a trusted friend to move the offshore funds into several new accounts, ensuring my tracks were covered. The next steps were going to be harder for me. I hated that innocent people might be hurt by what I was doing, but I felt I had no other choice. My first stop was a meeting with Christian, my future son-in-law. I laid everything out for him: the affair, the money I'd cut off, and my concerns about Marissa's fidelity. I even gave him the audio recordings of my conversations with her. Watching his face fall as the weight of it all sank in was heartbreaking. Christian was absolutely devastated. Next, I made my way to Adler's house. When the door opened, a stunning woman in her 50s greeted me. She had a grace about her that made me wonder how Adler could possibly cheat on someone so classy. It was another reminder of just how foolish people can be. I handed her the evidence: the videos, photos, and audio recordings. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the materials. "This isn't the first time," she said quietly, "but it will be the last time I ever put up with it." As I left, I couldn't help but think about how this might affect more than just their marriage. She mentioned being a major shareholder in an advertising agency. I had a feeling that might create some complications for a few people's careers. Then there was Emily. I couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of her juggling an $850 monthly car payment and a $14,000 monthly mortgage. Maybe her office husband would step up and help her out, though I doubted it. My next destination was the RV dealership, where I picked up a 36-foot fifth-wheel travel trailer. Everything was falling into place. I paid cash for both the truck and the RV, registering them under my cousin's name. I also had 3 credit cards under his name, ensuring my trail was well hidden. My plan was simple: head to South Carolina, lay low for a few years, and wait for Emily to file for divorce on abandonment grounds. With any luck, it wouldn't take long. A year and 3 months later, the dust had settled, and a lot had changed. Chad's life had crumbled. His wife followed through on her promise, divorcing him and taking nearly everything. She got the house, 60% of their assets, and $70,000 a year in alimony. Adler lost his job at the advertising agency and wound up working at one of the last small-town DVD rental shop as a tape rewinder and DVD cleaner. Now, he lives in a cramped one-room apartment above an adult novelty store. Emily fared even worse. The weight of her mortgage and car payments crushed her. She'd always assumed the house was paid off, but she never realized there were still payments. Eventually, she lost both the house and the car. With her credit in shambles, finding a decent place to live was impossible. She lost her job at the agency and picked up a gig as a waitress at a Perkins off the interstate. Desperate, she filed for abandonment to try and qualify for welfare benefits, hoping for a divorce settlement. But by then, I was long gone. The courts couldn't locate me, so she had to settle for a no-fault divorce just to get the assistance she needed. As for Marissa, her life unraveled too. After Christian confronted her with the audio recordings, she tried to brush it off, calling it no big deal and just some casual arrangements. He didn't buy it. The wedding was called off, and with it went the support of his wealthy family. Now, Marissa lives in a rundown 2-bedroom apartment with Emily in a rough part of town. From what I've heard, they've grown closer. Though I wouldn't call it dating, the steady stream of men handing them cash at the door every night tells its own story. And me? I'm living my best life in South Carolina. The sun shines, the beaches are full of bikinis, and I've landed a fantastic job with one of the big 5 companies. Life couldn't be better. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel,